Hi there, everyone. My name is Christian Eschbach, and welcome to another one of my album reviews. Today, if you're one of my regular viewers, you already know that this is the third part of an AC/DC triple shot. If you've already read the title, you already know what album I'm covering. But hey, let's talk about this, because this is going to be a special version we're going to talk about. And the reason why we're going to talk about a special version is we're going to talk about AC/DC Live. That's right, two albums in my hand. But there's a reason why. So there's the single disc version, and then there's, I guess, what they dubbed the collector's edition. Basically, you have a choice of the full concert or part of the concert. And honestly, that's what it is. They took half the tracks, and one of them was edited down. Now, I can also understand why they edited and why they did what they did. Now, this was the tour that was in support of the Razor's Edge album. So there is a fair, on this one especially, there is a fair amount of material from that specific one. When you get into this mix, it's a mix of more other material, we'll say. So I'm just going to list off the tracks on the first version, like the single album version, and then I'm going to cover everything when I get to this. Alright, so we got Thunderstruck, Shoot to Thrill, Back in Black, Who Made Who, Heat Seeker, The Jack, Money Talks, Hell's Bells, Dirty Deeds, Whole Lot of Love, You Shook Me All Night Long, Highway to Hell, TNT, and For Those About to Rock. That is one hell of an incredible list, and if you picked up just this version, you'd probably be pretty happy with just those tracks, because you get most of the best catalog. Okay. Now, before I move too far away from there, I'm going to point out one thing. The version of the Jack that's on there has been heavily edited, like it's less than half the length of what's on the double disc album. So let's get into this. And a lot of the tracks have been edited and cut down a little bit just so they could fit as much as possible on there. And here they're allowed to breathe a little more. So the whole thing does still open up with Thunderstruck, which I love the opening on here. That great little tease in. You get the thunder kind of going on in the background. And then you get the hi-hat just going on its own at first. And then all of a sudden you hear the amps come to life, and the you can just feel the energy. You know, like they build that atmosphere, and when it explodes, man. It's just great. And I will say, I love this variation of the band. The classic, what's considered the classic band, is great. You know, with Malcolm, Angus, Brian, Cliff, and Phil Rudd. But this has Chris Slade, and I really like him as a drummer, and I really like the stuff that he does with the drums, because he uses the toms a lot more, and because the bass from Cliff Williams is cool and everything like that, but it's not like he gives it a whole shit ton of low end. So the amount of bass or tom work that gets used in here really does add a little extra to the low end, which is great. Then we go to Shoot to Thrill. Once again, if you just watched my previous Back in Black review, you know how I feel about Shoot to Thrill. It's not a bad song. I understand why people like it. I understand why people enjoy it. Live, it is a great song. It has great stage presence live. Not my favorite song, though. Then we go straight into Back in Black. Now, I'm sure that at this point, that's one of those songs that I know they always put it early into the set list because they have to play it, but doesn't mean that they necessarily always want to play it. It's a great, fun song and all, but it's not one of those songs you want to play all the time. It doesn't have that, killer kind of passion to it. Then they do Sin City. And I don't mind Sin City, But it's one of those songs I find surprising that it's still such a mainstay after all these years. Just because I never thought it was a great AC/DC song. You know, like it's not a bad one, but it's not a great one. To me, it would be like if they were playing. Um, if they're playing Have a Drink on Me live, you know, kind of, sort of. And I know they've done that one too, but. Then we go into Who Made Who. Who Made Who's a weird song. That live, because it never quite sounds right live. It doesn't have that. There's a certain sound of the album production that I've never heard them quite capture the same live. There's like a certain buzz, a certain electric vibe to it, an energy. And not, I mean, like the way that they play it. I mean, like there's an actual living energy you can hear in the song that live just doesn't seem to be there. It doesn't seem to, for some weird reason. I mean, it's a great song. Everybody loves singing it live, but it doesn't. Then we get into Heat Seeker. I don't like Heat Seeker. I really don't. I've never been a fan of the Blow Up Your Video album in general, and Heat Seeker's just not a song I'm really into, honestly. Then we get to Fire Your Guns. Fire Your Guns, I understand why it's on this live album, and I think if Raise Your Fist and Yell hadn't been the brand new album, they wouldn't have been playing that song. I'm not a fan of Fire Your Guns. It's not a bad tune, but even on Razor's Edge, I think it's one of the weaker ones. Next up, Jailbreak. Great song. Fucking fantastic song. Great song live. You know, so much fun with that song. If you want more of my views on Jailbreak, go watch my review for the 74 Jailbreak EP. Next up, we get to the Jack. Now, on here, the Jack clocks in somewhere between 14 and 16 some odd minutes. I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head. It is Angus's Striptease song. Angus always has a striptease song. When I saw them when they were touring for Ballbreaker, they used Boogeyman as the striptease song. On here, it's the Jack. When you're watching the Live at Donington concert video, it's really cool because you can actually see what's going on. You get what's going on. When you're listening to this album, it doesn't have the same vibe. You know, the track kind of runs on a little long. It's not bad when you've got the album playing as a whole. Like when you got both albums playing as a whole, back to back, you know, running it out. It's kind of fun that way. If you're listening to it on cassette or anything else like that, it sucks up almost the entire second side. Or, you know, like, okay, if you were... Cassette was a double cassette, if I remember. Yeah, it was a double cassette. And the first side of the cassette you didn't enjoy listening to, or vinyl, you didn't enjoy listening to. You get to the second side, and then, you know, most of the second side is sucked up by the Jack, you know, so it kind of sucks. Because, you know, you'd have a lot of other good songs on there. Like I say, you got Jailbreak. And then after the Jack, you got The Razor's Edge, which I think is a song they do not do live often enough anymore. And it's one of those songs that really should not have been forgotten about from that album. It's a really good song. It's got really good vibe to it, really good energy and sound. And I love it live, too. It sounds really great on here. I'm really upset they didn't, when I saw them, they didn't play it live. After that, we go into Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. So, I mentioned this in one of the previous reviews. I've actually played the song live. And when I go to play it, I actually try and replicate this version of it. I sometimes get a little excited. Instead of doing more of the quarter note pattern on the floor tom, I tend to get a little excited and go more eighth notes to give it a little more vibe and tempo. But great tune, man. Like, I mean, it just so much fun. I even love doing the intro. You want some dirty deeds? Want some dirty deeds done down cheap? Hell yeah, man. It just, oh, yes. And then that part of the album finishes off with Money Talks. Money Talks at the time was a great song. In retrospect, I'm not so much into it. And when they do it live now, I'm still not so much into it. You know, it's okay. I really think I'd rather they took Money Talks out and put Razor's Edge back in myself. I think Razor's Edge it would add a much more dynamic to their set lists. You know, it's such a great song that way because it is something that is very kind of different for them, really kind of dark, and I don't want to use the word edgy because it's called Razor's Edge, but you know it is. It's edgy. So now we get to the second disc, or the second cassette, or the second two albums. Man, if you bought the live version, this thing's intense live on vinyl. Huge, complicated. So, the album opens up with Hell's Bells on the second side. Now, after Money Talks, you know, a slight little break, you know, blah, 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 and then Hell's Bells, great way to kick off the second half of the show. Really starts it off right, and honestly, it's one of those songs that I don't know how they still feel about playing it after all these years, but I do know that after all these years, I still love listening to it. I think it's fantastic. I think it's great. I think it is one of their most powerful songs. After that, we get into a song that definitely should be a live staple. It was designed to be a live staple, and I actually prefer it live a hell of a lot more than I prefer it on the album. And that is Are You Ready? Now, as far as I'm concerned, Thunderstruck obviously is a great way to open up a show, right? You know, it really is. But Are You Ready is also another great show opener. I mean, because you just kind of, are you ready? And then you just go right into the song, man. Great. Great song. And once again, it's on the album, on the Razor's Edge album. I think it's a solid song. But when you listen to it live and you get the crowd going in there and feel the energy and everything, it's so much better. Next up is That's the Way I Want to Rock and Roll. It's not a bad tune, but it's yet again another one of those songs where I've never been a huge fan of it. I don't mind it, but I could do without it as well. Then we go to High Voltage. Now, I've heard other bands perform High Voltage live. I've covered another band actually doing High Voltage live. Canadian band Annihilator, which I think was actually my very first CanCon episode. Might have been. Or very close to the very beginning of my reviews. And I talked about the way that they perform High Voltage live and how they even get the little bass part going. And you get... This version, I don't know why they didn't do the build-up on it. Or maybe they do and they didn't put it on here. I'm not sure. Oh, shit. High Voltage without that cool little bass intro, though, and the whole build-up on it doesn't work for me. You gotta have that whole build-up and that whole vibe, man. Because that's what leads to it. That's what gives it that high voltage kind of love. And it just really feels like it's missing. But on here, it's not bad. I mean, the song is fun still. It's just not the same. Then you get into, from here, it gets pretty awesome. Like, pretty much straight through to the end. You Shook Me All Night Long. Man, you go watch AC/DC live, you see You Shook Me All Night Long, all you see is a sea of dancing women when that song starts up. Just everywhere dancing. And I mean, not necessarily having to slut it up. You know, I mean, when they got the cameras out and stuff like that, don't get me wrong, you see the boobies flying. That sounds horrible. You see a lot of, you know, woo! But you don't, when you don't even care about that part, because the chicks in general are just moving and grooving every which way, man. It's just like, Yeah. Then you got A Whole Lot of Rosie. That's a fun song. That's a really fun song. My buddy Drew and I have discussed back and forth a few times trying to get that into a set list, just because it really is a fun song. Then you get to Let There Be Rock. I understand why people like Let There Be Rock, and live it is a great song. Not a song I'm really into. Bonnie's on here. Bonnie is just kind of a filler that's on here, a little time filler. It's alright. It's the only part of this that, but because of where it is and the way things flow, you don't really notice it because it's meant as a bridge for between Let There Be Rock and Highway to Hell. Great song live. Oh my god, great song live. Absolutely fantastic song live. Yes. Great song in general. I love playing the song myself. Love getting in there and just kicking it, man. Such a fun song. Then we go into TNT. Yet another song I would love to do live. Just got such great power, great energy to it, but never been able to do it live, unfortunately. Good song, though. Oh, my God. And it's meant to be played live, especially when you start getting into those oys, you know, the TNT. You got to have the crowd chant in that one, man. You have to have the crowd chant in that one. And then we finish with the quintessential closer for a night, because you cannot close better than having a shit ton of cannons going off live at a concert. And I've seen it, and it wasn't the same as this one. I'll be honest. You watch live at Donington. It's kind of fun to watch on live at Donington. The Ballbreaker tour, when I saw it live, you just see the little tips of these cannons sitting there. It's like, oh, look at the little tips of the cannons. Those are cute. Those are awesome. But then the tips come up. It's like, oh, this is awesome. And then, it's during the... Okay. That build up, and when you see those cannons raising from the stage, and it's just like... And the more cannons there are, it's great when they've got like 5 or 6. Ooh, that's cute. When they got like 12 of them or so, it's spectacular. Boosh, 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 boosh. Oh, love it. And you can hear it in there. You can hear it in the DVD or the CDs or the album or the recording. It's fantastic. Oh my god, it's beautiful. So anyways, that's all of it, folks. That's me talking about the two. Now, if you are a hardcore AC/DC fan, you need to own this version, the double live. You have to. It's mandatory. If you are a hardcore AC/DC fan, you have to own the double live. If you are a standard AC/DC fan or just getting into AC/DC, this one. Now, speaking of just getting into AC/DC, I personally had owned other AC/DC albums before this came out. When this album originally came out in 1992, this was a gateway to AC/DC for so many people. This was a lot of people's first AC/DC album. Or, their big introduction to AC/DC. And a lot of them went with just the single album. And it makes sense, because the single album is where most of the great tracks are. So, there's nothing wrong with using this album as your gateway drug to AC/DC, folks. This is a good gateway drug. It worked for a lot of people. Not my choice of a gateway drug. I would recommend Back in Black or Highway to Hell. Even Dirty Deeds. But, still, fantastic album. Anyways, those are my thoughts. Those are my views. Hope you've enjoyed this long, extended one. Let me know your thoughts and views below. That's what the comment section is for. Otherwise, hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Peace, love, take care.